Hey, this is JC and welcome to Small Brick City. Today we'll be exploring the creative Lego mindset. Although we can call this the creative mindset because you can apply anything I say today to work, to school, or any facet of your life. I have been in the creative fields professionally all my life. I perform as an illusionist, but most of the time I'm designing and creating magic for clients, special events, as well as other illusionists and magicians all across the world. I design magic to fit occasions, situations, venues, or requirements by clients for their special event or their corporate event. Sometimes I have to integrate my magic into a message, introduce a product, or introduce a person. Creative problem solving and idea generation is a big part of my work. Sure, on stage there's an artistic element, but off stage is a lot of thinking of solutions for not just stage equipment or the technical design of things, but the flow of a show, designing characters, writing stories, thinking about marketing and promotion for a project or for a show. It's just all-encompassing, but all these need creative ideas and solutions. I've written several books on developing ideas for stage illusion performance and design. I've also given talks and workshops on creativity for corporate organizations and schools. In it, I often talk about the 3 attributes of the creative mind. And this is something you can apply for Lego, at school, or at work. First, I like to make a distinction between being creative and being artistic. Everyone can be creative, although I agree that not everyone can be artistic. You can be creative without being artistic, and being artistic is not a prerequisite of being creative. Often people confuse the two. People would say, I'm not creative, when they really mean they aren't artistic because they can't create a piece of music, a piece of art, or draw or make a sculpture. But everyone can be creative. Being artistic simply means being able to create art, being able to tell a story in a given genre, medium, or craft. Now that may not be you, because being artistic is a subset of being creative. All artistic people are creative, but all creative people need not be artistic. So don't worry if you don't think you're artistic. You do not need to be artistic in order to be creative. Being creative is about problem solving, generating ideas for whatever field you might be. In Lego, it could be solving problems by using different parts for different purposes, or building MOCs, or maybe just finding a new way to build something, or finding new parts to represent a build. You don't really have to be artistic in the sense that you need to create a whole brand new building, but you may be creative in the application of pieces. For example, you might want to build a small build and you don't have the pieces that are required for the build. But using your creativity and looking in your spare parts bin, you find parts that you can substitute in order to recreate the same build. That is being creative. So it's very important for you to distinguish being creative and artistic, and to internalize this. Everyone can be creative. And right now, I'd like to share with you 3 attributes of the creative mind. The first attribute is to be a sponge, and that is to absorb information and knowledge. Starting off with domain knowledge. Domain knowledge refers to knowledge specific to your field or your craft. So in terms of Lego, you want to learn everything there is about Lego. Build techniques, sets, different ways people design things, MOCs, anything that you can find. There's so much information now, there's no excuse not to be educated. So be a sponge and learn as much as you can. Because most of us, when we are creative, we build off information that we already know. Very few people are pure creative geniuses, in the sense they can have no prior knowledge of something, they can maybe sit in a cave, meditate, and an idea comes to them and they can create something out of scratch. Most of us are not like that, including me. Everything, or at least most things, are built on prior knowledge we have. We make connections of existing knowledge and we develop new ideas from there. Therefore, the baseline, or the first thing that you must have, is knowledge. Just as important as domain knowledge is general knowledge. General knowledge is knowledge outside your specific field of interest. In this case, you want to get knowledge from everywhere else in life. In fact, the more unrelated it is to your specific field of interest, the better. You basically want to get inspiration from anywhere else but within your field. And that's so that you can make connections or develop ideas that no one has done before. The reason is this: most of us aren't pure creative individuals or geniuses, in the sense we can't start with nothing and come up with a brilliant idea that changes the world. Most of us develop ideas from existing knowledge that we have or ideas that we have. We make different connections, make some changes, and we come up with new ideas. This is what people generally do. In fact, all our best ideas are generally ideas that are built on old ideas but made better. So therefore, you do need this base knowledge, both general knowledge and domain knowledge, in order to have good ideas. The second attribute of a creative mind is to think big picture. Thinking big picture is very important because coming up with great ideas or being creative often means making connections. So if you think a big picture, you have more connections to make, you have more things to draw on in order to come up with creative ideas. In a way, this is related to developing general knowledge. You don't just want to be narrowed in or focused in on your specific area of interest or your area of work. You want to develop general knowledge because you want to have a big picture view of life and of your work so that you can apply different things to your specific field. In relation to Lego, often when we're making a build, we're often so focused in the different parts and how they come together. And if we're following instructions, sometimes that's even worse because we're so just narrow-minded and one-track mind that we want to focus on this path alone. So we lose a part. You may go crazy because you think, I can't complete the build. But if you're to think a big picture, step back, you might find a way to put in an alternate part or build it differently so that it solves the problem and you still get your end result. When you're building a build, it's good to think about why you're building the build in your Lego city. Or maybe a bigger question is, why are you building this at all? Sometimes if you run into a problem and you think big picture, thinking out of that small little focus sphere that you are concentrating in can help solve your questions. For example, sometimes when I'm building a small build and I want to build a particular stall, let's say a market stall, I try my best but I get stuck. But if I had to pull back and think big picture and think, why was I doing this? And the answer really was, well, I wanted to fill a void in my market street. So I wanted a stall that could complement other stalls. But then I'll think, well, in that case, it doesn't really have to be this specific stall with this specific design. It can be any other stall that would complement the market street. Just with this thinking, it often can trigger other ideas or new ideas because I get out of this narrow path which I've been focused on. So think big picture. That's very important for creativity. The last attribute of a creative mind is to know that there are no limits. There are no limits to the solutions or ideas that you can have for a problem. Sure, in the end there might be just one or two solutions, but when you're developing ideas or generating ideas, there are no limits. To best illustrate this, let me try a little exercise with you. I would like you to think of answers for this question. What is half of 13? That's right. What is half of 13? Just think about that for a while. Most people will be able to come up with at least two answers. Did you get that? Well, let's give it a shot. So most of you probably would have thought of this. 6.5. Some of you might have thought of 6.5. Would you agree? That's also half of 13. So that's two answers. That's pretty simple, right? I'm going to ask you once again, what else is half of 13? Give you a few seconds to think about it. Now your mind might be racing, but let me help you out. I can tell you that there are 4 more answers to what is half of 13. Some of you now might be getting smart and be thinking, aha, this is half of 13. We can also say that this is half of 13. We could also say that this is half of 13. And let me show you this. This is my potential answer for half of 13. That's half of 13. Do you know why? Because this is 13. So if we're to cover half, that would be half of 13. Likewise, we can say that this is half of 13. And why not go even further? This is half of 13. Do you buy that? Well, it has to be true, because if we do that, that is 13. So half of that would be half of 13. Let's try another one and forget about numbers altogether. This is also half of 13. Since the full 13 would be this. So I could go one step further and say that half of 13 also looks like that. And this, you have to admit, is half of 13 as well. One last one. Not many of you might get this, but this is also half of 13. Well, it's a bit of a trick question, or it's a bit of a tough one, because in Chinese, this is 13. Therefore, half of that would be this. Now imagine if you were to do it in any other language, or any of the other 100 languages in the world, you can get many versions of half of 13. The point is, with this half of 13 exercise, think about when you started. When I first asked that question, you probably had 2 or 3 different possible answers. And when I asked even more, you were thinking, well, maybe there are a few more, but not much more. But as you've come to see, there are thousands, if not tens of thousands of different possible answers and permutations of what is half of 13. What this exercise shows is that there are no limits when you're thinking creatively. Remember when I started, I said there are 2 possible answers for half of 13, and I'm sure most of you got that easily. Then I said there are 4 other answers. Your mind then searched for 4 other answers, and you probably found it. But if you start off with any creative problem solving or being creative in general, and you start off with, you know for the fact that there are no limits, that there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, or maybe even millions of possibilities, you'll be able to develop lots of ideas. Often we put these self-imposed restrictions on ourselves. We think, well, maybe there are 2 or 3 good ideas, and our mind just stops there because we force it to stop, because we automatically limit ourselves subconsciously by saying, well, there are 3 possible solutions, so our mind stops at 3. But if you set your mental bar much higher to call it 100 different possible ideas, your mind just free flows, and when you get one idea, the momentum builds. Just like when I showed you different answers or solutions for half of 13, once you saw those possibilities, I'm sure your mind just snowballed with ideas, and you could come up with hundreds of different versions of half of 13 as I was showing it to you. Well, there you have it, 3 attributes of a creative mind. Be a sponge, absorb domain and general knowledge. Think big picture, and know that there are no limits. If you can internalize these 3 attributes and really live your life this way, you definitely be much more creative, and you come up with more creative ideas in Lego, in work, or in school. Let me know if you liked this video and whether you liked the subject matter. I know it's not your typical Lego video, but I think that creativity is a big part of Lego, and if you're creative, you can get more out of Lego. Since my work is in the creative fields, I thought you might be interested to hear my approach to creative idea generation and problem solving, and how it relates to Lego. If you did like it, please leave a comment or give a thumbs up. And in a future video, I'll share with you 3 creativity techniques that I use not just in my professional work, not just in Lego, but in my day-to-day life. Speaking of creative projects, please vote for Gastro Alley. That's my Lego Ideas project. It's a food street, very unique. It fits between 2 modular buildings, but it requires your support. So just follow the link in the description, or follow the card at the top right of your screen, and please vote for this project. It needs 10,000 votes, so every vote counts, and I thank you in advance. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't, subscribe to the channel. What are you waiting for? And before you go, check out these 2 videos that you might have missed. Talk to you soon.